Hello everyone, Juxtaposition here. Today's video will be entitled, My Sweet Lord, He's So Fine. It's the story of George Harrison, the quiet Beatle, raised Catholic in Liverpool, England, merry old England, and about George Harrison's escapades, misadventures within the entertainment business known as music industry. John Lennon was reportedly quoted as saying that show business is an extension of the Jewish language. Think about that. Given the fact that Hollywood is 100% controlled, that's film, that's television, that's radio, that's music. Those are the four most important social engineering platforms. You can add social engineering because YouTube is Jewish bank funded, Jewish founded, Jewish managed, and Jewish censored. So, John Lennon's words burn true. So don't yell at me for being anti-Semitic. I'm not. I'm also upset about the crypto-Jewish Jesuits who apparently partner with the people in Hollywood to create false narratives. And that includes social media, which is overrun with Jewish people, many of whom changed their name to sound less Jewish, like Jon Stewart, whose real name is Leibowitz. All right? Anyway, it's a long list of people who've changed their names from their Jewish root names. All right, well, anyway, George Harrison was the quiet Beatle. And the more I drill into the Beatles and Beatlemania and Paul McCartney and John Lennon and the Jewish people that controlled them, because their agents were always Jewish, always, 100%, and their record companies were always Jewish managed and Jewish controlled and Jewish banked. And their music was 100% supervised and reviewed and approved by Jewish producers. So what I'm telling you is it's not at all clear that they wrote any of their music. I don't see any evidence that Paul McCartney wrote a single Beatles song. Now, maybe he did. But whether he did or whether John Lennon wrote Imagine or that Paul McCartney wrote Yesterday, an adult person who was 45 to 65 years old would have reviewed those lyrics before approving them for recording sessions, okay? They do not allow you to go into a recording studio that they're controlling to do whatever you want to do. So, anyway, I can't prove of what I just said, but my supposition is it's highly implausible that Paul McCartney could have produced his music. He produced 0 songs prior to becoming a record star. Before he got his record contract with Paraphonics and EMI Records, before he signed that contract, he didn't produce a single song, okay? And then all of a sudden he goes on a 10-year tear of producing music. And then after he leaves the Beatles, he gets the Ram album, and we have Maybe I'm Amazed, and the Ram album was excellent, but that could have been produced by the same people who did the Beatles music, right? And then things got real quiet for Paul, and things got, they had a little action for John Lennon, and George Harrison came into his own after leaving the Beatles with his My Sweet Lord release. And so it turns out that My Sweet Lord became a #1 hit, but I guess what I wanted to tell you is that the parallels with banking and Wall Street and the deceptions and concealment and the fraud that goes on in our banking system is a mirror image into Hollywood music industry. The Hollywood music industry is a fraudulent business, all right? So if the Beatles were pure as the driven snow, I mean, there's a 0% chance that the Beatles would be clean. It's 0. It's like saying the Super Bowl champions don't use performance-enhancing steroids and amphetamines and blood doping. Of course they do. Of course they break the rules. It's required. And of course the Beatles would be breaking the rules. But they don't have much to say about it because they live in a maritime law system. They follow orders or else. And George Harrison is the exact same age as Sharon Tate. He's 1 month younger than Sharon Tate. Sharon Tate was born in January 1943, and George Harrison was born, I believe it was February 25th, 1943, about a month after Sharon Tate was. And they were born essentially into a corrupt CIA social engineering entertainment business. Sharon Tate was in the entertainment social engineering business, and so was George Harrison. So was John Lennon. So was Paul McCartney. All right, so let me give you an example of corruption in banking, and then I'll immediately apply it to My Sweet Lord or He's So Fine, which is essentially the exact same song with different lyrics. It's the same melody, same chord structure. Exactly. So there are no creative, imaginative people that work in banking. Okay? They do what MIT says. They rinse and repeat. In other words, they take something that worked for someone else, they steal the idea, they repaint it, they put different kind of lipstick on it, and then they represent it as a new innovative product. That's what they do. And in Hollywood, guess what they do with television, film, and music? Same thing. They steal other people's ideas. They steal their ideas from books and scripts or screenplays. They steal their lyrics. They steal other people's melodies. They put lyrics and melodies together. They then target young artists who want to sign away their life with a deal with the devil. And then they buy the wardrobe and do the photo marketing pictures. And then they roll out a new super band that you think is the next Van Halen. All right, so what I wanted to tell you is that I asked a longtime banker friend of mine how would he define merchant banking. Now, just so you know, merchant banking is business banking. It's banking services for businesses, primarily corporations, since that seems to be who's running the world now. We're doing away with family-owned independent businesses. They're going the way of the dodo bird. We're going to end up with Amazon and CVS and Walgreens and Walmart and Starbucks. That's about it. College of Corporations, centralized authority, one world order, one COVID policy, one masking policy, one mandate policy, one digital money policy, no currency allowed. That's where we're going. But there's different levels of merchant banking, you know, from making deposits and dealing with customer money and paying bills, accounts payable, accounts receivable. That's not the kind of merchant banking that I'm referring to. There's also another division of merchant banking known as acquisitions, consolidations, mergers and acquisitions. That's the kind of merchant banking that I asked my friend about, where one business purchases another business. Okay, so my friend answered my question as follows. In merchant banking, mergers and acquisition requires 3 elements. Number 1, you require a pig. So you go to your local farm, you spend $50 on a pig, you put the pig in the back of your van, and then you drive to your local pharmacy where you purchase Cherries in the Snow lipstick for $50. That's from Revlon for you ladies out there. Revlon's Cherries in the Snow crimson red lipstick. So now you've invested $100. $50 for the pig, $50 for the Revlon Cherries in the Snow lipstick. And then the third element that's required for merchant banking is salesmanship. Another example of that would be fraudulent audacity. All right, so you schedule a meeting in an office building, in a fancy, expensive downtown high-rise office building with a mahogany conference room table the size of a tennis court, and you invite fellow merchant banking young men who graduated from Harvard in their business program, MBA, Harvard, MBA, Stanford University, MBA, MIT, Sloan Business School, MBA from Wharton Business School, University of Pennsylvania, primarily those schools, and other MBAs from other universities, other lesser universities. And you then roll in your pig with the Cherries in the Snow lipstick adorned on the pig lips and to the head of the table. And you present this pig as an Arabian racehorse, which is expected to win the next Kentucky Derby. Yes. Let the bidding begin at $1 million for this Arabian racehorse. And you may think I'm drinking. You may think I've been drinking. You may think I'm crazy. You may think I'm a lunatic. But I'm explaining to you merchant banking. That is exactly how it works. Now you think that these privileged young men who all belong to private clubs, you know the clubs, the Pacific Union Club, the University Club, the Olympic Club, the Bohemian Club, the St. Francis Yacht Club, the Jonathan Club in Los Angeles, the Knickerbocker Club in New York City, Manhattan, East Side, East 62nd Street. Yeah. How can these well-educated, indoctrinated at Harvard, Stanford, be stupid enough to pay over $1 million for a $100 pig and lipstick presentation? They will do it. They will do it because they'll make a very large commission. The numbers need to be high in order for the commission to be high. So there's not really a problem with the price. Plus, these learned men, these indoctrinated soldiers of deceit and concealment and criminal activity, they have no intention of retaining ownership into this. They are going to flip it to one of their clients, you know, like the California Teachers Pension or the Teamsters Union pension or some pension plan for state employees, some unsuspecting, dumber than dumb equity manager hedge fund that has no idea they're going to buy a pig, $50 pig for $1 million or more, because they're going to bid for this pig and they may get it up to $2.5 million before it's over. Anyway, that's how merchant banking works. You see how fraudulent that is? Do you see how deceitful that is? And I'm really not exaggerating. I'm really not. They have all kinds of lexicon of terms to deny what I just said. It's called applied linguistics. They call it hypothecation, rehypothecation. They call it front running. They call it chandelier bidding. They have all kinds of rules, unethical behavior that they don't follow. In other words, something like I just described is not supposed to happen according to the banker's rules. But I'm here to tell you it happens every single Monday through Friday for the last 1,000 years. They've been doing this. 2,000 years. All right. Now let's go over to Hollywood and the music industry and discuss My Sweet Lord. So I believe My Sweet Lord appeared on the Abbey Road album of the Beatles in 1969, which was released in September 1969. And then the Beatles were broken up. They were broken up at the time the Abbey Road album was released. And then George Harrison released his own My Sweet Lord album the next year in the 1970s. And it became quite a hit. Problem was that Bright Tunes owned He's So Fine. He's So Fine is a song that was written allegedly by Ronnie Mack, who was a young black man from New York City who had died in 1962 in the Bronx. I said the Bronx, New York. Ronnie Mack wrote a song called He's So Fine, and it was covered by the Chiffons. The Chiffons. And the Chiffons made it their hit. But the Chiffons didn't write that song. Ronnie Mack did. But Ronnie Mack didn't really control the song because he had to sign a contract with the record recording company, right? So Bright Tunes ended up with the rights to that song. Ronnie Mack died. His family got some royalties. And then George Harrison, now that he's got the success of the Beatles, and it's 10 years later, it's 10 years after the fact, 10 years after He's So Fine was written and released, My Sweet Lord is a hit. So that means there's going to be a lawsuit. So there's a lawsuit for stealing intellectual property, right? All right, so there's a lawsuit. So George Harrison had to defend himself in court. He lost. Because they brought in some expert witnesses, and the melody structure is identical between My Sweet Lord and He's So Fine. The same notes, the same sequence. It's virtually identical. So George Harrison his lawyers were unable to come up with any other examples of a song that met that pattern. That it was only those two songs. Those are the only two songs that are Siamese twins. So the court found in favor of Bright Tunes. When I say the court, I mean the judge. The judge decided that George Harrison had plagiarized He's So Fine, except that he cut George Harrison some credit and said that you did it subconsciously. But I'm going to cut George Harrison even more credit because I really like George Harrison. Personally, I've never met him, but I've come close to meeting him. And in Lugano, Switzerland, I almost met him. Anyway, my point is that I don't think George Harrison wrote the song in the first place. And I don't know if Ronnie Mack wrote the song in the first place. I have no idea who writes the songs in Hollywood music. I have no idea, okay? I'm no longer going to assume Paul McCartney did. We know Elvis Presley wrote exactly 0 of his songs. Frank Sinatra wrote 0 of his songs. And Frank Sinatra was a great performer. And Elvis Presley may have been the greatest performer. But Elvis didn't write his music. And Frank Sinatra didn't write his music. So why is it important that you believe that Paul McCartney wrote his music? He'd be the only successful recording artist in the history of the world to have done so. They all get help. Not just the Monkees. Neil Young got help. Okay? They all get help. They get lots and lots and lots of help. Because they are completely owned and controlled. Anyway, so George Harrison loses the lawsuit, and he's ordered to pay $587,000 to Bright Tunes. And then in steps Alan Klein, a Jewish man from New Jersey who happens to be, from Newark, New Jersey, who happens to be the estranged manager of the Beatles. He's had a falling out now with Paul McCartney and Paul McCartney's father-in-law, whose name is Leopold Vale Epstein, and Linda Epstein, his wife. Linda Epstein, not Eastman, Epstein. Okay? So Paul McCartney doesn't speak with Alan Klein anymore, and John Lennon is getting pretty angry at Alan Klein too. So Alan Klein steps up and he says, I will pay Bright Tunes $587,000 to buy their record company. So it appears to me that there's a money laundering transaction here where George Harrison effectively pays money that reimburses Alan Klein, which makes Alan Klein purchase Bright Tunes for free. Okay? So thanks a lot, George Harrison, for giving a gift to Alan Klein of Bright Tunes, which owns your song, My Sweet Lord. So Alan Klein owns My Sweet Lord. which was really He's So Fine. So I'll post the link below, and you can listen to these songs independently, side by side, and you tell me if they're the same. Anyway, that's ripoff number one. That's an example to putting lipstick on a pig and presenting it as Arabian racehorse. But I'm not done yet with My Sweet Lord, because there's a second ripoff besides the ripoff of He's So Fine, written by Ronnie Mack. The other ripoff, of course, is with the Hare Krishnas, or with the Hindu people. Let's talk about the Hare Krishnas, because it was George Harrison who went off to see the Maharishi in transcendental meditation in India, whereupon he was introduced to Hinduism and Krishna. Oh my God. And just so you know, ranking religions, number one is Christianity, which encompasses, dozens of religions. Christianity number one, and then it's Islam, or Muslims, are number two. And Islam is almost equal to Christianity, and it is the fastest growing religion on planet Earth, or it was before COVID. And so it would appear that in the next few years that Islam will be the number one religion practiced for all the people who are remaining alive on Earth, would be Islam. Then Christianity would be number two. But as of today, of posting this video, Christianity is number one, Islam is number two, Hinduism is number three, which is Krishna, and then Buddhism, which Oliver Silverstein Stone is a Buddhist, so you got that, and then it's all broken down. But you'll notice that Judaism isn't anywhere in the top 10, okay? Judaism is not practiced by very many people on the planet Earth, okay? Maybe 30 million people, something like that, at the most. In other words, Judaism is a infinitesimally under 1/1% of the religions practiced on Earth would be Judaism. And yet, it seems like it's the premier religion of New York and Los Angeles and Hollywood. Isn't that fascinating? All right, so the ripoff that I'm referring to with Hare Krishna is that in the song My Sweet Lord, we have the repetition of the mantra that the Hare Krishnas follow. I am somewhat of an expert about this because I spent some time visiting the city of Berkeley temple for Hare Krishnas, which was run by Sarila Hansadudu, who had a $200,000 Porsche 911 Carrera parked in his garage, whilst he's lecturing us about the evils of materialism. Needless to say, yours truly asked the stupid question, so what about that Porsche Carrera sports car that's in the garage right over here? All right, so we had to have a secret meeting where I was invited to leave because members only. It's a members only meeting because they don't want some smarty pants like me asking the head guru why he's got a Porsche Carrera that he takes up to Grizzly Peak and Skyline Boulevard to race after he's done with his prayer services. Anyway, so the mantra for the Hare Krishnas is 16 words, 32 syllables. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama. Rama Rama, Hare Hare. That's it. That is the background for My Sweet Lord. So no lawsuit on that. Now, why is that? Why was there no lawsuit for stealing the Hare Krishna's chant? I don't know. Maybe the CIA wants to confuse the Catholics who believe that George Harrison was raised Catholic, which he was, but he abandoned his Catholicism in favor of Eastern India religions like Hinduism, and he integrated the chant Hare Krishna into his lyrics of My Sweet Lord, confusing many lost Christians that Krishna is somehow Jesus Christ. And of course, that's not true at all. Krishna is the deity of Hinduism and supposedly was born 3,200 years before Christ was born. I don't want to get into the rabbit hole of the Krishna faith, but let's just say Jewish people produced that song, Jewish people distributed that song, and Jewish people, I think, are very pleased with the confusion of the applied linguistics messaging, mixed messaging of Hare Krishna in a song sung by a Catholic, George Harrison, using the leverage of his Beatles music, which is managed by Alan Klein, a Jewish man from Newark, New Jersey. And you have people that are actually confused that maybe Krishna is Christ, which he is not. Also, as you may remember, Jesus died on the cross and then ascended into heaven. And Krishna remained on earth, was cremated. He didn't leave the planet. And he didn't die for your sins either. Krishna did not die for anyone's sins. Oh, God. All right, so what else can I say about this? I guess that's the gist of today's talk, is that My Sweet Lord appears to be a ripoff of He's So Fine, which is also another ripoff of the Hare Krishna mantra. 16 words, 32 syllables. And Alan Klein, a Jewish man from Newark, New Jersey, getting Bright Tunes record agency for free because George Harrison is going to buy it for him for $587,000 in 1978. Yeah. You can't make this stuff up. And just for the record, George Harrison died at 3738 Laurel Canyon Boulevard. I said Laurel Canyon Boulevard, but on the north side, on the downhill, about halfway down the hill, in Studio City, within 1 mile of where Noreen Kidd Shatner had been murdered just 2 years before. Just 2 years before George Harrison passed away from cancer at age 58. 58 years old. George Harrison passed away on November 29, 2001 at 3738 Laurel Canyon Boulevard, within 1 mile of where Noreen Kidd Shatner was murdered in William Shatner's swimming pool in Studio City. She died on Berry Drive. She died on Berry Drive, and George Harrison died on Laurel Canyon Boulevard. And as the crow flies, they were within a mile of each other. You know that Noreen Kidd Shatner was murdered on Sharon Tate's anniversary of her death, August 9th, 1999, her 30-year anniversary. William Shatner's third wife was murdered in his swimming pool, and he called 911 before he jumped into that pool to rescue his wife, who he didn't know if she was dead or not, and he's on the phone calling 911. You think that's a little bit suspicious, that maybe he knew she was dead already in advance? Anyway, William Shatner was divorced 4 times. Now, Noreen was murdered, but he was in the process of divorcing her when she got murdered. So I'm going to say, William Shatner, congratulations, you only had 4 terminated wives, okay? Whereas Johnny Carson had 3 terminated wives and a separation with his 4th. And Robert Evans, whose name is Robert Shapiro, he had 7 divorces. Zsa Zsa Gabor had 8 divorces and 9 marriages. Jennifer O'Neill had 8 divorces, 8 marriages. And there's George Harrison dying down the hill from where Inger Stevens was murdered on Woodrow Wilson Drive, just below that. You cannot make this stuff up. So George Harrison, same age as Sharon Tate, and he died 32 years after Sharon Tate died, at age 58. All right, that's it. Thanks for listening. Have a great day. We'll talk soon.